This is Join Us in France, episode 253. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is a podcast where you'll hear pragmatic advice for your next trip to France. On today's episode, I talk with my guest David Steinberg about creative ways to save money on your flights to Europe and France, of course. What he did is he used miles to book open jaw flights. And you know what? It sounds like a good plan to me. What are open jaw flights? Let's say you live in Boston. You might fly from Boston to Paris, then make your way down to Barcelona by train or by car or even using a European airline like JetBlue or whatever, and fly home Barcelona to Boston. If you draw this on a map, it kind of looks like an open jaw, which is supposedly why, this method got its name. It turns out that this open jaw or multi-city booking is really cost effective so long as you don't ask Delta or United or American Airlines to also fly you between Paris and Barcelona. You're buying 2 one-way tickets, Boston to Paris and then Barcelona to Boston, to follow our example. This used to be a terrible idea, but it's not anymore. Even if you're booking with low-cost airlines, apparently. So next Sunday, I'll publish an episode about low-cost travel within Europe. And in that episode, we will also talk about low-cost airlines between the US and Europe, like WOW Air, Norwegian, and Level. That will be with another guest, but the two episodes are really, complementary to each other, so I'll publish them close together. So multi-city or open jaw, that's the way to go. And so let's talk about it. But let me make clear that David does not work in the travel industry. He's a regular traveler like you and me. And show notes for this episode are at joinusinfrance.com/253, where you will also find David's excellent guest notes. Bonjour, David, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, Annie.
It's so nice to talk to you. Thank you for your patience. We've had problems with this call. Today
my pleasure.
Today we're going to talk about your experience with doing kind of finding interesting methods to lower the cost of international travel. Can you explain a little bit more about this?
Sure. What I'm going to talk about a little bit is we did a multi-city trip to Europe, and especially coming all the way from the West Coast, the United States, our most expensive part of the trip is usually getting there. So we booked what's called an open jaw ticket, and it's called open jaw because it sort of resembles an open jaw if you draw it on a picture. And the idea is booking into one city, traveling around, and then flying home out of another city. And so oftentimes you see chat board questions around, I'm going to Paris and then I'm going to Barcelona. How long should I allow for getting back from Barcelona to Paris? And because most people think in that way, I have to book a round trip out of the city I'm going to.
Right, because for decades that's what you had to do, or you'd pay a fortune.
Yeah, a fortune. And really, especially if you're traveling with miles, so a lot of us use credit cards and other things to save up miles, and then we redeem these things. The airlines mostly don't care. And so a great trip to plan is flying into Paris and out of London, or flying into London out of Paris, or flying into Paris out of Barcelona or Madrid, as long as the airlines have a partnership, whether it's Skylead or some of the other ones, they tend to be very friendly that way.
Right. And also what happens is a mistake I used to make all the time is that I would book my tickets originating in Toulouse, because I'm always doing this in the opposite direction. So I'd say I want to go from Toulouse to Salt Lake City, and it would give me terrible prices. But if you change it, Paris to Salt Lake City, and then just take a train or do a low-cost airline to get to Paris, voila, it's much cheaper.
Yeah, for sure. And so we tried to book a trip on miles and found the easiest for us. And it completely depends on direction. So we couldn't go, for example, London and then flying home out of Paris. There wasn't anything available, but we found the reverse route. So we kind of just reverse planned our trip. We flew into Paris, spent a week, then took the Eurostar, which was fantastic, to London, and then spent a week in London and actually we went some other places in the UK and then flew home out of London, and it was very easy.
Yeah, that sounds good. And how much do you figure you saved by doing it that way?
Well, for us, it was a lot of we didn't save the money because it was the same cost of miles. But what we really saved was time, right? Because getting to and from an airport or trying to get back to a city, for instance, if we'd gone to Paris and then tried to go to the UK and then had to go back to Paris,
right,
that would have been probably more money and a lot more time. And really, most of us U.S. travelers who are not yet retired, when we go on these trips, our most precious commodity besides money is time. We're always trying to beat that, one more day in a museum. So, it kind of makes it easier. I can't wait for the day when I don't really care, and when they offer me, $2,000 to get off of the plane, I'm going to do it.
Right. So, what was it like taking the Eurostar? I don't think this is something that has come up a lot in the podcast. It'd be interesting to hear your experience there.
So first, it was really good. We were a little nervous going underwater for that long, but you don't really notice it. And so I advise book well in advance. This is not one of those things where it gets cheaper the closer you get in, though there may be some fares like that. It's the longer you book in advance when they open, the better it is. And you depart out of Gare du Nord and get there early because there is immigration. So you basically go through immigration for the UK in Paris.
Okay.
And the line gets very long, and I will say this: people know how to queue on the UK side, maybe a little bit more nice and polite than some other places.
But I know where you're going with this.
But once you get through, they ask you, why are you visiting the UK? And you get through, and then once you're in London, you don't go through anything. You're done. And you're in the center of London, so you're not going through an airport and dealing with those kind of issues. You get off the train, and they have a right to, search your luggage if they ask you, but they don't. You just get in a cab and go wherever you need.
Right. So, yes, Gare du Nord is a zoo, no matter where you're going. So, get there. I don't know, but I would be tempted to say give it 2 hours because it's really busy. It's very big. So, you might have a bit of a hard time finding the right spot where you have to go to begin with. And then, obviously, there's the immigration and customs stuff, which, I mean, if it's for a whole train, that's going to be thousands of people.
Yeah, they do process it pretty quickly. And someone told us 30 minutes, but we were there an hour in advance. And that was a good thinking. You can't get too early because you'll just sit around. But, and if you know what you're doing, it's easier, of course. But we found the trip great. And would do it again, and we do it again in the other direction. It's just we haven't done that yet.
Right. So was the signage good in Gare du Nord to get to?
Yes.
Okay.
Very simple. We Google mapped it ahead of time because it's funny, when we were in Paris, we ended up in 3 or 4 different train stations. Once when we went to Giverny, another one to Reims, and then another one for the trip to London. And it was very confusing. If you don't know where these are. Some of them are across the street from each other, but once you know where you're going, it was very, very simple.
Okay, that's good. So maybe I should also ask you about kind of some differences between your experience in Paris and in London, because there might be people who are wondering, hey, I can only do one. Which one?
Well, this is Journess in France, so
I know.
definitely Paris. But they were such different experiences. We had never been to Paris before, but my wife grew up in London, and so the main trip for us was Paris, and we had such an amazing time. We stayed in Saint-Germain, and we walked at least 10 miles a day. And,
oh, goodness.
People talk about that, and I think you can certainly do Paris if you don't want to walk. There's many options: the metro, the
buses,
Uber, buses. But we on purpose prepared, and we walked and walked. And let me tell you, it was. I think we broke our Apple device that didn't believe how many miles we walked.
Yeah, 10 miles. I think I've never done that. I've done 10 kilometers, but not 10 miles. That's amazing. That's impressive. You must be fast walkers.
It really, it just didn't. We just decided most of it. Now it was the summer; it was hot, but also comfortable enough to walk. And we felt like, well, let's just keep going. And the city is such a great walking city, and that area, so it was perfect for us.
So what was your hotel? You said it was Saint-Germain, but what was it?
Yeah, this was the Hotel Millésime, and on Rue Jacob. And a very, very nice, quiet hotel, amazing staff. That was the highlight for us. Every time we walk in the door, Monsieur Damien would stand up and greet us by our names. And after a while, we said, "Please sit down. You're making us embarrassed." Every time we walk in. It was a reasonable place and so centrally located. And that area can get very loud at night. And we didn't have that issue. But, 2 blocks away from just everything. And just very helpful. Very helpful
wonderful.
People.
That's wonderful to know. And so what are some of the things that you enjoyed in Paris?
So we loved the museums. We especially liked Orsay and Rodin's gardens were incredible. We had our first experience of what I'll call wine denial. So we went and bought a picnic at a little store near the museum, and they said, "Well, this is Paris. You can take wine anywhere." Well, that's true, except when you're trying to get in line to go visit a museum. So we brought a picnic with us, and the security guard saw our bottle of wine and laughed and said, "I'm going to keep this here for you. Don't worry. It will be here when you come back."
Oh, that was nice.
And it was. When we came back, they all made a joke and said that they had drank it, but they didn't really. And so sometimes you get a bit of funny advice, like, you can take wine a lot of places, but if you're maybe not to drink in the street.
No, well, this is a bit of a complicated issue for Paris, because the city of Paris doesn't want to crack down on visitors having a good time and enjoying some wine in the parks or whatever. I mean, obviously, they don't want to do that. But they don't want public drunkenness either. So it depends who's doing it. And it's really pretty sad because the rules are different. But if you're a homeless person who's drinking, they'll probably give you a hard time. But if you're just a visitor enjoying a bottle of wine with some friends or your spouse or whatever, they probably won't say anything. So, but Americans in general are very liberal with their wine drinking in public. French people don't do that so much, unless they're winos, So.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to sound like alcoholics. We're really not, but our second favorite thing was we weren't going to go to the Louvre. We just felt like it was so crowded. Maybe we'll skip it. But we found a tiny little store called Maison Guillard, and all these little delicacies and salmon. And we said, "Would you make us a picnic?" And she said, "Yes, absolutely. Come back." So she made us a whole picnic and with a little bottle of champagne, another bottle, and told us to go across the bridge and picnic sort of on the grounds of the Louvre. And we did this. It was a Friday night, and it was just spectacular. We're eating this food and drinking a little champagne, and we happened to have the museum pass with us. And all of a sudden we said, "Well, we're here. Why don't we just go inside? It's a Friday night." And it was relatively uncrowded. I mean, now you need a timestamp. I know your listeners are aware of that, but this, you didn't need it. And we walked inside. We knew exactly what we wanted to see. which was Napoleon's apartments. And, we drank champagne with Napoleon. It was a good time.
So were you able to bring your bottle of champagne into the Louvre?
No, Annie, we had finished it long in advance.
You had already had it. Okay. Yeah, that would have been surprising.
It was a small bottle.
Yeah, sure. No, yeah. Oh, very nice. That sounds really good. You have on your list also, which I'll put up so people can see your guest notes. You have a restaurant that you recommend.
Yes. We wanted a special anniversary dinner, and they recommended Sésambres, which was the person called it a gastronomic experience. So it was a 7-course meal, and they just choose it for you. So it's modern. It's not old French. It's modern, and you sit down and they just start bringing you things, and everything was fantastic.
Okay. So it's one of those.
I don't know how we, by the 7th course, I don't think we wanted to see food again. And it wasn't really, it wasn't like super large quantities. It was just everything was a little taste of something new and different. And I even tried foie gras, which I wasn't going to do, but I couldn't resist.
Right. If they bring it to you, you're like, well, I might as well try it.
Yeah. And my wife really didn't want that. So for, sort of ethical reasons. So she said that to them, and they brought her something else. It wasn't a problem. People were so accommodating wherever we went, really.
Very nice. Very nice. So that would be a place you recommend for a special dinner out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And our other favorite things, we went to Giverny much with the help of your podcast. We knew what to do in advance. We bought the tickets online in advance. We are very active, so we got there and took the train and then immediately rented bicycles. And that was the best decision if you can do it, because everybody else got on this shuttle bus like a crowd of people.
Yeah.
And we had a nice leisurely ride in from Vernon across the bridge to Giverny, and walked up with our prepaid tickets, past the line, enjoyed a couple hours there. Monet is one of our favorites, and it was crowded. No matter what time you go in the summer, we got there very early. It was very crowded.
Yeah.
But we had a nice time. But the best part is on the way back, we stopped for lunch at Restaurant Baudi, which is part of a little hotel, and it was our pace, and we were able to – we really just had this little tiny dirt road to ourselves all the way back. And we stopped at the old mill. I don't know how to say that in French.
Le Vieux Moulin?
Yes, Le Vieux Moulin. And also a chateau there that's a Norman castle that's been sitting there empty for years. It was reminded us of a Monty Python movie. And just the two of us, nobody around. And we biked back to the train station in time to go home, and it was a fantastic day. That's
great. Tell me again the name of that restaurant, because that's not in your list.
It is Restaurant Baudi, Baudy, and they have a hotel, and then right across this little lane is a garden where they serve, just a great lunch.
Okay, so is that in Giverny, or is that in...
in Giverny, yes.
Okay, so that's one of the ones in Giverny. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've eaten there.
When you take the bus, you don't see these things because it's about a block and a half away. And,
yes.
We were able to do that. And then we visited a small church and a cemetery where a downed English World War II crew was buried. And, you miss these little things if you end up on a bus with somebody.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's true. And cycling is not, it's not very far. It's maybe 5-6 kilometers? No. It's quite flat.
Yes. And since we went there, so it's kind of funny because you get the bicycle at a bar, and you pay this guy, and you go around the corner and get your bikes. Since that time, they've now installed a bunch of the kind of electric. You go up with your credit card and you just grab a bike. So I think they have some competition there now. So I think there's a lot more options, whereas before, you kind of give your driver's license to the guy behind the bar, and then you hope you're going to see it.
So is this? But you did, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what we did, and we made it okay.
Yeah. So somebody is renting out electric assist bicycles.
I think they're either electric assist or it's just the kind of place where the bikes are all in a row and you put your credit card in and get a bicycle.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if it's actually an electric bicycle. I think it's someone would have to see. It's been a year and a half. So.
Yeah. That's cool. And it looks like you also went to Reims.
Yes. Now we did a half-day guided tour because I didn't want to drive, again, with the drinking. But still, I wanted to be safe, and we booked a tour half-day. I could have booked a 3-day tour. It was the most fantastic thing. I loved being in the caves. I loved seeing how things were made. And by booking a tour, we were in 2 or 3 private houses where it was just us, literally us and the guide and the master of the champagne house.
Wow.
And we didn't get on a tourist train or anything. We just tasted the champagne and walked around and learned about the process. And it was an incredible day. And then he drove us into the vineyards themselves. And that was our anniversary day too. So we couldn't have had a better day.
That's wonderful.
Than that. And it was an easy trip. Again, the TGV is so fast.
Yeah.
You get to the train station, you're on it, and then in 45 minutes, you're in Reims. And we had a lovely half day there of champagne, and the rest we went to the cathedral to see the windows, and just fantastic. I can't recommend it enough.
Wonderful. Okay, so we ended up talking about Paris a lot more than we did the open jaw. But the open jaw trick is, next time I have to do a big trip, that's what I'm going to do, because I'm done paying thousands for these tickets. It's so
and so
much.
Air France is part of has a relationship with Delta and KLM, and so that's it. You can, as long as they're kind of partners there, you usually can do, when you go to book it, you would say multi-city trip. They don't call it open jaw on the website because people would be confused. But again, especially if you're paying with points, but even without points, often you'll find the same price as if you were doing a round trip ticket, and sometimes less, believe it or not.
That's very good to know. Okay. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else you want to discuss? Did we cover it?
I think we covered it. Thanks again to your podcast. We're going back. Last time we went without the kids. This time we're taking our daughter, and we're spending a week in Paris in an apartment. And then we're breaking our own rule. We're not doing an open jaw. We're taking the TGV down to Avignon and spending 2 weeks in Provence. At one of your listeners recommended Roussillon.
Yes.
And so we're renting a villa there, and then TGV back to Paris.
Wonderful.
And again, based on recommendations, spending the night at a hotel in CDG and then flying out in the morning. So we're not doing open jaw because the train, in this case, makes much more sense.
Yes. Well, that's it. It has to be, a good solution for what you have in mind, and everybody does it differently. But it's good to mention to people that there's this open jaw possibility, and there's also several discount airlines now that do direct flights between the U.S. and France. I don't have all the names on my fingertips, but Norwegian is one, although it's not so stable. Not so good.
Yeah. I think what most people should do, and so we've had several friends do this, is they book an open jaw, so maybe flying into Paris and out of Madrid. And in between there, they can take a lot of European discount airlines that are much cheaper. We get shocked when we come from the U.S. and say, wait, you can fly from London to Madrid for €40? So we don't have quite the same discount airfare here.
Right.
So sometimes it's okay to go ahead. Yeah.
No, those you have to book in advance. Like if it's EasyJet, you really have to book quite a long way in advance. Ryanair also does discount stuff, but I hate them with a passion. But there's several. Air France has a discount airline too, but I can't remember what it's called right now. If I remember, I'll put it up. I'll put it on the website when I figure it out. So it's on the show
you'll
notes.
have to wish us luck because this next trip in Paris will obviously no car, but we're renting our first car in France in Avignon for 2 weeks, so should be an adventure.
Just remember, no speeding. You cannot go even 2 over the speed limit. Nothing. If it says 90, go 90. That's it.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they will send you a ticket at home if you forget.
The one thing about OpenJaw, one more thing is a lot of people prepare for the airport they're flying into, but don't end up looking at the airport they're going out of. So, for example, we flew into Charles de Gaulle and out of Heathrow, 2 very different experiences. And so it's important to remember that in advance. To get to Heathrow and go through the process there is very different than going through Charles de Gaulle. They both have their interesting features. And so if you're doing OpenJaw, remember to look in advance what it's like to check in, how far in advance you have to get there, what kind of transportation, etc.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you so much, David. You have been very patient.
Well, my pleasure. I hope this helps somebody. And
I'm sure it will.
We can't wait to hear more.
Have a wonderful next time in France. Provence is lovely. You're going to love it. And driving in France is pretty easy. The biggest problem you're going to have is parking.
Yes, I know.
All right. Merci beaucoup et au revoir.
Au revoir. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Fox, Stephen Bennett, Joannie Riccardi, and Karen Etzel for pledging to support the show on Patreon this week. Patrons enjoy several rewards, including membership into a secret Facebook group where I answer questions as soon as they come up. They can also hire me to be their trip consultant and help them work out details of whatever they want help with. Visit patreon.com/join us, Patreon. Join us, no spaces or dashes, to see the different reward tiers. And thank you so much for giving back. My thanks also to Amanda Brinkerhoff and Rosalind Peterson for sending in a one-time donation by using the green button on any page on joinusinfrance.com that says Tip Your Guide. Donations of $20 and over also gets you an invite to the secret Facebook group. And Amanda wrote, Annie, thank you so much for this podcast. I love learning about France and constantly make notes on ideas for future trips. The tip in this short podcast about the Napoleon III apartments was spot on. I never knew about them, even though I've been to the Louvre 3 times previously. I was on a quick trip to Paris, but I decided to make a visit to the Louvre just to check out the apartments. You sometimes forget the Louvre was an actual occupied palace. And then you visit this wing and wow, it was beautiful. Thank you again and keep those little hints and tips coming. Thank you very much, Amanda. Yes, I will keep them coming. My Paris self-guided tours on the Voice Map app are selling well and getting good reviews. And because of this success, Viator is starting to sell them also. These are the same tours. They all run on the Voice Map app, but there are different ways to buy them. I recommend podcast listeners buy them through joinusinfrance.com/audio tours because, as the tour creator, I reserve the best price for my listeners. But lots of people buy them directly through the Voice Map app as well. And now you'll be able to buy them through the Viator website too. The thing is, Viator has its own ratings and reviews process. So people who see my tours on Viator right now see 0 reviews. So if you buy the tour, any of the tours on Viator, please write a review. It'll be super helpful. Actually, please review the tour no matter where you buy it because pretty soon TripAdvisor and Lonely Planet will also start selling them, and they probably have their own siloed ratings and reviews systems as well. I'm really pleased with the number of ratings and reviews I've gotten on the Voice Map app. It is really encouraging to read that people, whether they listen to the podcast or not, love taking these tours, which is exactly what I was hoping for. I just need to keep getting the word out about them. And of course, I appreciate any help you can give me there. Word of mouth is always the best way. And if you'd like to support the show without spending a penny, that you wouldn't have spent otherwise. Before you go shopping on Amazon, go to the bottom of any page on joinusinfrance.com and click on the Amazon ad. Because you came to Amazon through Join Us in France, I get a small commission and it doesn't cost you a penny more. Same thing with the booking.com ad for hotels room. And thank you so much. It doesn't cost you any extra, but it helps me pay the bills for this podcast. I will be closing down the Addicted to France closed group on Facebook at the end of October. So if you're in the Addicted group but not in the Join Us in France closed group, please move over. Why? Well, I want to spend less time on Facebook. Story of my life. As predicted, now that I've tightened the rules for coming in to the closed group on Facebook, the growth has been slower, which is what I wanted. Also, I want to recommend a podcast series to you. It's called The Missing Crypto Queen. I know people, very good people, very smart people who were taken in by scams, and this series exposes one of the biggest scams ever. It's well worth a listen, and it's only 7 episodes. I've rarely burned through podcast episodes as fast as that one, and I haven't done as much as I wanted to this week because of it. But anyway, it's called The Missing Crypto Queen. I want to send a shout out to Patricia for capturing the wildcat compote. She'll know what I mean. And this cat is now in the loving hands of her original family. That was not easy. Congratulations, Patricia. In the meantime, my own cat has jumped on my lap for the very first time ever yesterday. She's 4, so this took a while. I'm still a flutter about that because this cat normally, she likes to watch everything we do, but from a distance. The second we get close to her, she runs off. So that was a big move on Ananas's part. Well, that's hard to say. If she ever jumps on my lap while I'm watching TV, I'll know she means business. Now, the Labradoodle does that every day, but the cat, no. The weather is still great here in Toulouse. Much of France has had lots of rain last week, but we didn't. But don't worry, I've been putting out water for the plants, the birds, the hedgehogs, because they get thirsty too. I don't eat snails, which might be strange for a French person to say, but the hedgehogs, they eat snails and they eat slugs. Oh, they are great. I love them. I want more of them. If you want to recommend the podcast to someone who already listens to podcasts, tell them to search for Join Us in France. And as a matter of fact, anyone can do that anywhere, including on a browser or Spotify, Alexa, whatever. If you look for Join Us in France, you will find us because we're everywhere. And thank you for listening and spreading the word. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Have a great week of trip planning, and I will talk to you next week. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2019 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.